Hello, everyone. We at Joinray PMS thank each one of you for registering and joining us today. Before we start our webinar, I will share with you a small video on Joinray PMS. Shubham, can you start the video, please?
It takes years of practice to perfect a skill, especially in a field like stocks. If you don't give it your undivided attention, things will come crashing down. Now, this is where Joinray as professionals can stand. To make the right moves and keep things flying high, while you can take a well-deserved breather.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is staying indoors and you and your near and dear ones are safe. I'm Neeraj Mutha, and we are overwhelmed by the response we received for this webinar. We have received over 550 registrations. Our topic for today, equity market, opportunities and outlook, COVID-19 and beyond. Before I hand it over to Sri Jairam sir, I will share few thoughts with you. I'm sure you all will agree, these are testing times for us and our businesses. We all within are worried about what the future holds for us. Lockdowns, pandemics, quarantine, depression are the new words which are being used frequently in our conversation today. The world around us looks extremely pessimistic. If I quickly summarize some of the takeaways from various market veterans, top companies I've heard on TV or in webinars, it seems like a very gloomy scenario. People talk of the world economy contracting, companies going bust, countries' GDP slowing down, different kind of World War in progress. No doubt, in the present scenario, these are all possibilities. But human beings have one very special quality, and that is survival instinct. Being an optimistic, I feel future is always bright. To prove my point, I will visit the history in brief for you. In the past 30 to 32 years, the Indian stock market has seen many bull runs. And after those runs, market collapsed all of a sudden in the range of 30 to 50%. However, the next bull run was even more stronger. In 1992, Sensex touched 4,000 plus and thereafter it corrected. In 2000, another bull run, it touched 6,000 plus and corrected thereafter. In 2007, it touched 20,000 and corrected thereafter. Recently, the Sensex touched 41,000 plus and corrected. If we take this history as a guide, just imagine where the BSE Sensex will be in the next bull run. On any fine day, when we will hear the news that we have found some medicine to cure COVID-19 or some vaccine to prevent COVID-19, just imagine how the markets will react thereafter. And we all pray that a scientist should get success in finding a vaccine very soon for the welfare of the mankind. No doubt, COVID has thrown a lot of challenges. However, there are some opportunities also. Today, China is the factory of the world, but now world is looking for some alternatives. And there lies an opportunity for India. It's time to reboot and restart. As in the early 90s, the then Prime Minister, late Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao, and Finance Minister, Shri Manmohan Singh, by their progressive policies, changed the trajectory of the Indian economy. I call it they rebooted and restarted the economy. Similarly, now India has an opportunity to reboot and restart, to take our economy to another level. As we have certain advantages, We have a very high domestic consumption. Oil prices are extremely favorable. When we consider all this, I feel macros are certainly stacked in favor of India. Also, excess liquidity is an important factor. The major reason for the rallies in the stock and commodity market post the Lehman Brothers crisis was the excess liquidity created by the stimulus given by countries like USA. In the present scenario of COVID-19, many countries have announced and other countries are in process of announcing a stimulus to help their economy to steer through the challenges of COVID-19 and lockdowns. This is going to create huge liquidity all over the world. And directly or indirectly, this excess liquidity will find its way into the stock market. However, the situation is complex. And to take benefit through the stock market, one needs a professional fund manager with a proven track record who can help us by selecting the right stocks for investment. Now, I take privilege in introducing to you Joindre PMS and our very successful fund manager, Shri V. Jairam, whom I call Jairam sir. Joindre PMS was established in October 2018. And in the past 18 months, we all have experienced enough turbulent times in the stock market. In spite of this, Joindre PMS has delivered since inception an alpha of 12+% over the benchmark indices, that is the Nifty 500. For 1 year period, the alpha is more than 15%. All returns being mentioned are aggregate portfolio returns calculated on TWRR method, post expenses, and in compliance to the SEBI guidelines. And our fund manager, Jairam sir, is a chartered accountant. He has more than 27 years of experience in the equity market. He has successfully managed funds across different business cycles and has consistently delivered superior returns to his investors. Jairam sir has always been a value investor. He has a stringent template when it comes to stock selection. He believes value and price are two different things in the market. He reiterates price is what you pay, but value is what you get. Ultimately, it is the intrinsic value of the stock that matters while making an investment decision. He believes volatility in the short term leads to irrational investor behavior. And at that time, stock price has no relation to its actual worth. Now, let me hand it to the master himself, Jairam sir, who will share with us the outlook and opportunities that the equity market has to offer in the current turbulent times. Before I hand it over to sir, I just want to let you know we are using the webinar platform of Zoom, and you are welcome to submit your questions on the question and answer tab. In the end, depending on the time we have, we will try to take questions and sir will be happy to answer them. Over to you, sir.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Joindre Value Fund was formed in November 2018 on the back of IL&FS fiasco, which happened in the month of October 2018. It was just a month since the IL&FS fiasco happened in the month of October 2018, when the largest NBFC in India, promoted by marquee investors like LIC, SBI, HDFC, SBI, and so on, failed to meet its obligations of rupees 94,000 crores to the market, and that started epidemic in the stock market and money markets. So at the very commencement of our journey, it was on the back of a major fiasco of IL&FS. Thus, at the very beginning, we had to ensure that we had to have a very, very strong investment philosophy to encounter these type of mishaps that could happen in the future. And it was for the very first time, the government failed to come to the rescue of an institution which was promoted by its bodies. So it was a lesson for us that henceforth we need to be a lot more careful about the government intervention of assistance to failing institutions. It was a profound lesson which we learned at the very beginning, And that made us to tighten our philosophy of investment from the very beginning itself. So to say that we started our business during the most turbulent times. And it's about 6 months since we started our operations. We had a second biggest financial scam called Diwan Housing Finance Limited, which was another $7 billion US dollar scam. And after 6 months, since the Diwan Housing scam, we had another scam called PNC Bank scam. And after 6 months, we had yet another scam called S Bank scam. So for the entire 18 months of our operations, what we have seen and the background on which we have operated is very, very turbulent. And it was a period of scams, period of fiasco and turbulence in the markets. So for us, working on turbulent times in the background is nothing new. And we have been very, very successful during the turbulent times, thanks to our investment philosophy, which I'll be discussing with you later. As Neeraj said, we have been able to generate an alpha of 15% over the benchmark Nifty 500, which we have for our portfolio fund. Now let me move from scams to epidemic, COVID-19. So now we are getting an international flavor. We had enough of local flavor of scams, and now we have got into an international flavor of an epidemic. Yes, COVID-19 is a very serious pandemic, which will affect in the short run, medium run, a lot of economic activity across the globe. And India, along with other countries in the world, is a victim. The obvious problems of COVID-19 are well known. There is going to be enough unemployment. There is going to be enough scarcity of capital. There is going to be a lot of depression in the market. There is going to be a contraction in earnings, so on and so forth. And in India, I don't see it is going to be any different. The earnings are definitely going to have an impact in the short run. And it's only companies with very strong balance sheets and very, very strong business model and great corporate governance are going to stay, and the rest are going to vanish. I'll be discussing about this again when I touch on investment philosophy of Joint Tree Value Fund. At the same time, the flip side to this downside or the positives which India can look forward from COVID-19. I would like to list 7 very important highlights which can propel India into the next orbit of economic growth. The first one is the income tax rate. We are one of the most competitive, advantageous income tax rate provider for corporates operating in this country. We have reduced the income tax rate to 15% for corporates commencing their operations from 2019 till 2023, which is as competitive as it is in other Southeast Asian countries. Number 2, the well-oiled and rolled out GST mechanism. Yes, GST had a lot of teething trouble, and it's 2 years since GST has been rolled out, and it has smoothened out, and everything is gone online, and the interface for the companies with the tax authorities have gone online, which has reduced corruption, which has reduced red tapeism, and it has made the ease of doing business. And 3, India has got a huge supply of qualified manpower, and which can be acquired at very competitive rates. So that's the third biggest advantage I see in the climate of economic growth. 4th, the climate in Europe and other Western countries in terms of availability of finance, or rather the cost of capital in the Western countries have come to zero and sub-zero. This is going to definitely lead to a flush of funds coming to countries like India for the reasons I'm going to state next. On the back of COVID, China, which has been the bedrock of manufacturing activity for global manufacturers, have come into a bad taste for all these countries. They have definitely left a space for a country like India and other emerging countries as a source of an alternate supplier or an additional supplier, as the case may be. So I am very sure that India is going to get a large piece of this business, which is going to propel the economic growth and in turn also very, very positively affect the stock market movements going forward. But there is some time to go for all that. I hope this government really, really takes advantage of this situation and accordingly cuts out its fiscal policies and foreign policies to attract major investments in this country. And I'm very sure the government is aware of it and they will make this COVID epidemic into an epic economic opportunity. I'm very sure about that. Now, moving from COVID to our investment philosophy. Jointry Value Fund has got a philosophy in picking stocks based on two principles. One, the standard deviation of the portfolio should be low. And number two, the return on portfolio, we aim at 15% CAGR, meaning we double the capital every 5 years. These are the two philosophies based on which our portfolio is built. Now, the valuation game is a perception game. There is no holy grail, there is no rule book for us to follow while investing. For example, investments are made based on eyeballs, made on footfalls, made on likes, made on dislikes, so on and so forth, which are absolutely subjective. It need not earn any returns, it need not earn any return on capital, and still people are ready to invest. This is a modern theory of investment today. Now let me elaborate it further. We are very aware of a very popular car taxi brand which all of us use called Uber. Uber is one of the most well-renowned brand globally. Now let me get into their financials. It's a very popular brand used worldwide, but if you look at their financials, it's pathetic. For example, let me talk about the third quarter of 2019, the results which I happen to go through. They made a loss of $1.2 billion on a turnover of $3.2 billion. And the commentary that was given was, the company has improved its performance over the second quarter, which was a loss of $5.2 billion. So again, people do give value to operations which has improved from $5.2 billion to $1.2 billion of loss. So the game of investment is a game of perception. Now let me give you a second example, which is more interesting, which is domestic, and I think it will be interesting to all the listeners. We have a homebred stockbroking company called Zerodha Stockbroking. I don't know how many of you are aware of it. It's just a 10-year-old company started in Bangalore by one Mr. Nitin Kamath. This company, stockbroking company, processes 7 million trades every day. 7 million trades. And last week somewhere I read in a US magazine that Charles Schwab has done 2 million trades per day and has created a record. Here I'm talking about a company which processes 7 million trades a day. And last year alone, they have processed 1 billion trades, 1 billion. The emphasis is on 1 billion trades a year, which is unheard of. Today, it is the largest stockbroking company in India, having a huge market share. Now, let's talk about their revenue model. It's very interesting. They don't advertise. They don't have any marketing people. They don't have any relationship manager, so on and so forth. Their only investment is on technology. They are one of the most superior technologies, and they expect this technology to deliver them results. Now, let me look at their operations. They say there is they say their business as a social outlook also. They want people to grow rich by investing in equities. So they have wonderfully come out with a plan saying that I'm going to charge you zero brokerage for investments, meaning all delivery trades go at zero cost. And for all trades done on F&O or any trading, whatever you do on trading lines, they charge you rupees 20 per trade. And the balance sheet of this company is 800 crores without a rupee debt, without a rupee external debt. And all this 800 crores have come through their organic operations. Now, juxtapose Uber with Zerodha, a very well-known name and a pretty, so to say, a relatively new name. If these two names prop up for investment, the second one is obviously a great choice. Again, this is a company which is technology-centric, like your Uber. That's the only similarity. So the model of business where you need to make returns along with technology is the way we look at stocks, and that's our investment philosophy. Just because you are a company from a sunrise industry, if you can only give a top line at the cost of the bottom line, we are not for it, and we don't understand the mechanics, the arithmetic of operations in that scenario. Now, there are two ways of investing. One is a theory which goes like this: value versus growth. And the second one is value versus price. You could have heard when you read on television, when you watch television, you read on papers, people asking whether it's a value strategy or a growth strategy. Till date, it has not made any meaning to me what is a growth strategy and how a value strategy is different from a growth strategy. You can get growth without value. That is Uber. You keep on increasing your top line without adding any value, that is recording losses after losses and saying that mine is a growth strategy. So this argument of growth versus value doesn't cut ties in our philosophy with Jointry Value Fund. Rather, we have that laid back, well time tested value versus price. As Neeraj rightly put it, price is what you pay and value is what you get. So we really concentrate on the value part of it, because price is given on the screen. It's just that we have to find we have to know whether it's a fair value to pay for buying the underlying stock. So our entire research concentration is going to be on the qualitative and quantitative analysis of a stock what you would like to buy. The qualitative analysis goes on understanding the management, the resilient balance sheet, and the ability of the management to be nimble-footed, to restart, to reset their business in these times of COVID-19, because going ahead, the businesses will be required to be very nimble on their feet. It will be required to there may be a requirement to shut down during a few months, again restart. So a company should have the ability to do this with nimble-footedness, and this is going to be an additional requirement henceforth for us to look at while analyzing a company. Apart from that, the quantitative analysis, like your cash flows, like your debt equity ratio, like your ability to generate growth, etc., are also looked at in depth. So according to us, value includes growth. There's nothing called value versus growth. Growth is part of value. So needless to say that value is got only when there is growth underneath. Now, may I request Shubham to show our portfolio of stocks so that I can explain to you much better, taking a few examples from there. Yeah, these are the top 10 holdings of Jointry Value Fund. I'll just read out in case you're not able to watch on the screen. We have Hindustan Lever Limited, that's the highest weightage in our portfolio with 11.2%. Then we have a HDFC Bank with a 10%. Then we have a HDFC Limited with a 9.65. Then we have a TCS with 5.7, Sundaram Finance with 5.2, Pfizer with 4.5, Sanofi with 4.5, GMM Pfaudler, Infosys, and Asian Paints. So these are the 10 top holdings of Jointree Value Fund as on date, and it has a weightage of close to 65% of our corpus. Now let me touch on a few stocks and what was the thinking behind getting these stocks. One is Hindustan Lever Limited. As all of us know, it's a very common name. It's a very popular stock by name, and it's just that many know about it, but very few have invested in it. So the thing here is, in stock market, knowing and doing are two very different things, according to us. If you look at the reports that are generated on Hindustan Lever in the last 18 months from very popular names, most of them had a sell call on Hindustan Lever stating that it's a great company, but the valuations are pretty pricey and it need to correct itself. I'm saying when we entered the stock at around 1800 levels, which was about 6-7 months prior. The thing here is our research, our qualitative and quantitative analysis was showing just the opposite. We were seeing a company which was able to grow at 10 to 12% on a base of 40,000 crores, and it was much bigger than 4 or 5 of its competitors. Let me introduce this graph on Hindustan Lever for better explanation. Shubham? Yeah. I reckon you can read on the screen the operating metrics of Hindustan Lever versus Marico plus Dabur plus Godrej Consumer Products plus the FMCG division of ITC. When I say the FMCG division of ITC, it is excluding the cigarette division. Now, these 4 companies put together, in every metric, take sales turnover, take EBITDA margin, take profit before tax margin, take PAT margin, take return on capital employed margin. None of them come anywhere close to Hindustan Lever. In other words, Hindustan Lever is bigger than these 4 companies put together. That's exactly what I wanted to say. And the prices of these companies at the point of time when we were buying Lever 6 months prior at around 1800 levels were trading at the same valuation. So if you really look at as on date, the valuation is corrected for all other companies and it has remained intact for Hindustan Lever Limited. So what I'm trying to stress here is we have an investment philosophy where we are steadfast on our understanding. We are not influenced by any reports which can come contrary. And yes, it takes a lot of guts and it takes a lot of confidence on your understanding of the subject. So this is on Hindustan Lever. Now, I would like to talk to you about a second stock called GMM Pfaudler, which is on the top 10 of our, which is one of the top 10 of our holding. We are close to about 3.5% invested on GMM Pfaudler. Again, it's a pretty interesting story for me to share with you. In the month of November, December, when all these companies in pharma sector, Indian companies were undergoing the US FDA trial, and day in, day out, were getting into trouble, and the valuations in the market were getting smashed, and we had no clue as to how these problems are going to get resolved, because if a plant A gets into trouble and they come out, the plant B gets into trouble, and so on and so forth. It was just going on, and we had no handle as to how to look at this problem. So we were just scratching our head for looking at a company, a MNC company, perhaps, where the hardware for all these pharma companies are being manufactured, so that these companies will have less trouble on account of FDA. FDA audit is very simple. They look at your processes, they look at your machinery, and anything defective, they give you a qualification which puts you into trouble. And most of these companies had qualifications on account of their equipments, on account of their processes. So when we were looking for an opportunity in this chaos for Indian pharma companies, we hit upon a GMM Pfaudler, And this is a US multinational with Pfaudler having about 51% stake in this company. And these were, this company was manufacturing glass line products, which was the hardware for Indian pharma companies. And we picked this stock at rupees 1400 in the month of November 2019. And the rest is really a very good happening for us. As we talk today, the price is about 3600, giving us a return of more than 150% in about 5 months' time. So what exactly we do in our portfolio management is, while selecting a stock, we'll try to get a niche of the stock, A, and B, very interesting thing we do in a portfolio discussions, or we don't look at the upside of a stock. We only look at the downside of a stock at that point of buying. How can things go wrong? We do a sensitivity analysis only for the downside as to how things can go wrong, what can go wrong, and at what prices from where we buy things can fall up to. So the discussion is always on the downside of a stock rather than the upside. If you look at our portfolio reports, we have got about 41 hosted on our site. We only give a buy recommendation. We never give a target price for a buy recommendation. This is because we think the stocks what we buy are for pretty long term, and these companies can really compound well and give a returns of about 20% per annum in the longer time frame. So we desist from giving a target price for any of our buys. Now, let me talk about yet another example where we invested with the same confidence of a very good return, excellent business, a monopolistic business, no challenges to the business, excellent cash flow, although it was a PSU company. Yes, as a policy, we don't buy any PSU companies across the board, across industries, across sectors. It's almost a policy in our philosophy that we should not invest in a PSU company. But we broke this philosophy when we saw the fundamentals and the appeal and the prospects of a company called IRCTC, which got listed in the month of October 2019. We were one of the first buyers into this stock for our PMS. And on the opening day of the in the stock exchanges, we had bought a huge quantity for our portfolio clients. And we are very happy with the way things were progressing. And 5 months down the line, we did get a news that this company is going to expand into running of trains. They are going to run about 150 trains in the next couple of years. They are going to build hotels, low-cost budget hotels, something like what you call Ginger. And this we are not modeled into our modeled into workings at that point of buying the stock. And it was sometime in February 2020, we decided once this announcement had come, we are not going to remain in the stock, and we had exited in full. And luckily for us, by the time the stock has more than doubled. So what I'm trying to tell you is, I'm not trying to emphasize on the profits what we made. What I'm trying to emphasize here is on the philosophy, where there is a change in the business. When there's a change in the business model, we don't hesitate to walk out of the company, because we don't understand what are the economics of running a train and what are the economics of running a hotel and what impact will it have on the balance sheet. Because at the point of we buying the stock, it was a very light balance sheet, very light asset model balance sheet, and which we thought is going to turn asset heavy, and we basically dislike asset heavy models of operations. Then before I go to the next topic, let me dwell on one more interesting share called Asian Paints. Because why I'm giving these examples of, so many of these shares are very obvious. Everybody knows about these names, everybody knows about their operations, everybody knows about their leadership. But unfortunately, there is a lot of reluctance on the part of investors to buy these shares, saying the price is high. The price is high. They don't seem to understand that you need to match price with value and then make a decision. And unfortunately, also with the television channels, with the 24-hour all these news channels, all the papers, they are all so much what to say, they give a spin on things which are really not recommendable according to us. Shubham, can you just insert Asian Paints? Yeah, again, this is like the Hindustan Lever, what I explained earlier. Asian Paints is bigger than its three of its competitors, AkzoNobel, Berger Paints, and Kansai Nerolac in every parameter. Look at the net sales, look at the margins, look at the earnings growth, look at the EV by EBITDA ratios. In every metric, it is superior to the other three. That's the reason behind which all these stocks, what I just mentioned, are pricey, because their valuations are so high, because their fundamentals are exemplary, and they are absolutely shoulders and above the rest of the competition. So anything which is valuable will definitely be costly according to us, and will attract a lot of attention and investment in the longer run. So this is the philosophy of our investment, where we give emphasis only on value. We really don't look at the price. I mean, in the sense, at the point of evaluating a company, and once we determine the value, we look at the price. And if there's some mismatch between the value and the price, we get into the stock. So this is broadly our investment philosophy. And now, excuse me. Now, I think I broadly touched upon the investment philosophy, and looking at the opportunities going at post COVID 2019 in the stock market. We think there is going to be a very great opportunity for investment. As I told you, on the back of the new economic prospects coming out of China to India, I foresee a lot of FDIs coming to this country. And FDI is a long-term capital, as we all know, and this will generate employment, this will generate income, and this will propel economic growth in this country. I expect FDI in a very large scale in the years to come, which will be very beneficial for the economic growth of this country. And the stocks, what we have already recommended, what we showed on the screen, are perhaps going to outperform even in the days to come. Just because there is going to be a new reset to the economy post-COVID doesn't mean there is going to be any major shift in economic activity in terms of banking, in terms of people consuming, and in terms the pattern of people spending money on. If at all the COVID-19 epidemic is cured, people find a solution fast, we are going to only see an overall revival in the economy. See, as we talk today, the major industries like leisure and travel, theaters, hospitality, and including hospitals are suffering. It's quite counterintuitive when I say the word hospitals. If you look at the figures from hospitals in the last 2 months, the footfall in the hospitals have fell from 60% to 80%, which is quite contrary to our general thinking that during epidemics, hospital will do a great business. No, it has not spared any business, including hospitals. So what I'm trying to tell you here is, we will get only an economic upbeat opportunity once COVID-19, the tone of COVID-19 plays down, or if there is going to be a complete solution or complete resolution to this trouble. The general feeling today that markets are going to be challenged on account of COVID-19 in the immediate term is absolutely true, but definitely not for we long-term investors. I have always seen from my past experience, markets never obliges cheery consensus. The cheery consensus today is markets are going to go bad on the back of depressing economic activity. The new sectors, what we are looking at, which perhaps we need to do a lot of hard work on, and we don't have any of these, any of the companies in these sectors under coverage. One could be non-life insurance, companies in life insurance business, companies in specialty chemicals, companies in agrochemicals. These could be throwing out good new opportunities for investors post-COVID-19. In conclusion, I would like to say that we don't have any idea where the market will move in the near term or the medium term. But in the long term, we are very sure that market will be giving resounding returns for patients and for investing in the right stocks. Stock picking is all about portfolio management, and it is the role of a portfolio manager to get into the right stocks and sit on it and and see it grow. The vital thing is going to be stock picking. With this, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful, comprehensive presentation. So we have received many questions from the participants, and we thank the participants for this response. There are many questions that sir has answered during his presentation. I have also jotted down a few questions for you, sir. Sir, participants want to know what is your exit strategy on stocks, both on the upside and downside?
Yeah. We don't have anything called a return strategy, which we follow as a holy grail. We exit the counter, we exit the stock only if the fundamentals based on which we have invested, it changes. We don't give any importance to the price movement of a stock. For example, I buy a stock at say 500 rupees, it comes to 400 rupees. I only look at adding to the stock provided the fundamentals based on which has not changed. So the exit is going to be purely on the change in fundamentals. If it, as I gave you an example earlier of IRCTC, when the basis on which the investment is made holds no more good, we make an exit. I think I've answered your question.
Wonderful, sir. So some participants want to know your view on the pharma sector and auto sector.
Oh, great. Auto sector is obvious, is going to be short-term to medium-term pain. There is no way out of it. It's not just in India, it's just globally. People have started consuming, people are going to be very conservative in their spending. And the upside to all this is going to be the influence of COVID in one's buying of an automobile. All these days, when we were, many of us were using Uber for our travel, we used to have share Uber, so on and so forth. If this epidemic requires that one need to keep a social distancing even in future for times to come, and we are not able to find a solution, then perhaps one need to have his own vehicle, in which case I'm very sure the sales of automobiles will pick up in the long run. Perhaps there's going to be short-term challenges as we talk. And in automobile sector, we do have a stock in our top 20, which is Bosch. It's a very interesting stock. As all of us know, Bosch is a German multinational, which makes powertrains, so on and so forth. It is the first company in the world to make powertrains for electric vehicle Tesla in US. And it's the only manufacturer with the technology of powertrains for an electric vehicle. So with India trying to go electric and working very hard towards it, I feel Bosch will come out trumps. And yes, automobile companies, you have to be very, very choosy. You have to be very, very specific as to why you're buying. And I prefer buying these type of ancillaries to an automobile, which have got a technological edge. They are more a technology company rather than to say an automobile company. The entry barrier is very, very high, and they supply to every brand across, whether it's in listed space or unlisted space. So their market is going to be very bigger, very broad. And yes, automobiles will definitely have a future, though you have to independently do a research on each and every company with respect to competition. Because, for example, as we talk about passenger vehicles, there are only a couple of passenger vehicle companies which are listed. Yes, you have one Maruti. Yes, you have one Tata Motors, the big ones. And okay, I'll take Mahindra also in the same breath. But you have umpteen players who are unlisted. So the competition will come from the unlisted space. So to think that we have to make a choice only in the listed space will not be perhaps very, may not pay in the long run also, because the players who are not listed are very, very strong brands who are very, very competitive in the pricing, and they're posing already a great challenge to all the listed ones. So in short, stock picking is going to be all about investing in auto. Now coming to pharma. Pharma, we have to again divide between Indian pharma and multinationals. Personally, if you look at our portfolio, we have two stocks in the top 10, Pfizer and Sanofi, with a very good weightage of 5% each. I personally prefer MNC pharmas to Indian pharmas for reasons earlier I alluded to, like FDA reasons. And these FDA issues are just prolonging for the last 2-3 years. Let me give you an example. In 2014-15, when Indian pharma was a flavor of the market, every Indian pharma company went up 2 times, 3 times. I remember Sun Pharma quoting at 1100 rupees, Cadila quoting at 1000 rupees, so on and so forth. And today, all these shares are quoting at 40 to 50% of their 2014-15 rates. And we, in contrary, invested in a share called Abbott India, which is the MNC, and it had a market cap of 7,200 crores sometime in April 2015, the same period when Indian stocks were flying high, and it was quoting at a very, very low price earning multiple and other parameters. Today, as we talk, as these Indian companies have come down 50% in the last 4.5 years, Abbott has gone up 4 times. The price today, as you and I speak, is 17,000 rupees, and the market cap has gone from 7,000 crores to 35,000 crores. Similarly, let me talk of an example of Pfizer and Sanofi, which we just bought about 12 months prior. When we bought Pfizer at around 2,900 rupees, 2,800 rupees for our portfolio clients, the market cap was hardly 11,000, 12,000 crores. The balance sheet had about 2,500 crores in cash, and they were having a EBITDA margin of 35% and a net profit margin of 21%, and it was going at a very low PE. Now, if you look at today, the market cap has gone to 24,000 crores in a period of 14 months, and the price has come up to 5,000 rupees. Same with Sanofi. So I think I would prefer Indian MNCs. They have a very strong therapeutic segment products. They have got a very strong acute segment products, and they are insulated from these FDA issues. Very strong return ratios, and at no point they will dilute their equity. So one can definitely expect better returns, according to me, from MNCs rather than Indian pharma stocks, because there's always a Damocles sword hanging over the Indian pharma companies when it comes to these regulatory issues, which we can never fathom at all. Yes, they may be good trading bets, definitely not investment bets in my lexicon.
Wonderful, sir. Next question is, how frequently do you churn your portfolio?
Yeah, basically, as you know, Neeraj, our portfolio philosophy is to buy stocks and sit on it and see it grow. We like to, it's like a seed growing into a sapling, plant, and a tree. So we hardly want to churn our portfolio. We want to see the portfolio grow, and there's no reason to churn when the companies in which you invest are doing well. It's not easy to find an alternate company for investment. I'll put it this way. We have 4,500 companies listed in the Bombay Stock Exchange. In our jointly value funds investment template, not more than 100 qualify as investment grade, meaning 4,400 stocks are outside the investment grade. So we have to be very, very specific as to why we want to churn a portfolio. Like I told you, again, to repeat myself, I gave an example of IRCTC, why we came out of the stock. So unless we have a fundamental reason like that, or we suddenly see the falling financials of a company due to some extraneous reason which we haven't factored into, only for factors like that we do churn. Otherwise, there's no reason for churning. We don't believe in churning. We believe in investing well. If you invest well in the first place, there's no reason for churning. Churning happens only if your investment is doubtful, if your investment quality is under suspect. So once we do very hard work at the point of investing, the question of churning doesn't arise at all, unless for the reasons I mentioned to you. So the churning is very, very less in our portfolio. That's the answer.
Wonderful, sir. So, I've asked you this question, sir, before, and again popped up. So how do you differentiate between value and growth stocks?
Yeah, to me, value includes growth. So growth is subsumed in when I say value. See, you can grow without value. As I gave you an example of Uber, I can give you umpteen examples. Say, for example, most of the online platforms what we use Swiggy very frequently. We use Ola. We use other online companies very frequently in our business. I mean, in our day-to-day life. Just go to, we use Paytm, for example. Just go to their balance sheets. You will get a revelation of thoughts. What's happening over these companies surviving with this type of return ratios? It's just cash burning. So, but you look at their top line will grow at 30-40%. And if you look at their bottom line, about 70% of the top line is burnt. What I mean to say is you'll have a 10,000 crore company on top line and you'll have a loss of 7,000 crores. So it is just a cash burning exercise. According to me, there's no value. So you can create growth without value, but you cannot create value without growth. Growth is a very, very important component of value, and the vice versa need not be true. I think I answered your question, or do I need to elaborate further?
Thank you, sir. This was good. Participants want to know, have you been buying during the current carnage in the market? If yes, and why?
Absolutely. See, we are of our fund has a philosophy not to remain in cash. We hardly have about 5% cash left in our PMS, and the rest are all invested. We are a fund who have a lot of confidence in our stock picking, and we are 100% fully invested. Yes, we are buying during the carnage with the whatever funds that is left behind. The same stocks what we have on which we have coverage, and we are very, very confident that this carnage is the greatest investment opportunity for us to deliver returns to all our portfolio investors.
Thank you, sir. So you covered Asian Paints in your slide about the paints in general, but sir, it's been your favorite pick also. In the TV, we've been hearing that Asian Paints has asked for a credit period from their suppliers, and it's been your favorite pick. So why is this contradiction there, sir? Can you please share your thoughts?
I mean, any good company would like to use the opportunity that the situation provides. Today, the business provides an opportunity for companies like Asian Paints to renegotiate with their suppliers, to renegotiate the payment terms, and to renegotiate on the prices. So I don't see any reason why it has to be taken with a negative connotation. Rather, I would take it with a positive connotation, because Asian Paints, as I told you, is also going to get affected by cash flows in the short term. It's not that Asian Paints is going to have a normal business. As you know, all activities are under lockdown. There has been no business for the entire month of April. There's going to be lesser business in the month of May, and their business is also going to get affected in the short run. So renegotiating with suppliers and other suppliers, or perhaps the order of the day for any corporate, irrespective of their stature and size. And I think it's a good business wisdom also.
Thank you, sir. So I'll just combine a couple of questions. They are basically on sectors. What is your view on the insurance sector and banking stocks performing in the long term?
Yeah. We already have a coverage on a couple of companies in the life insurance sector. We have a coverage on HDFC Life Insurance and SBI Life Insurance. And yeah, definitely these two, I mean, insurance sector has got good prospects, though they may not grow manifold in terms of returns. It's a pretty steady company. There'll be a very steady growth in these insurance companies. It will be a very steady compounders. They might not give you any outbeating returns. They will definitely protect the capital, like what a insurance company should do. But it is definitely should be a part of one's portfolio, though I will not allocate a large percentage of my portfolio to insurance companies, because at best they could be a steady compounder. There's no great niche in the insurance company. It's a product selling. We have about 30 to 40 companies who sell insurance, and insurance is a huge push product where your pricing is very, very important, and people resort to cutthroat pricing in these days of economic depression. So there will be definitely an impact on their profitability also. But definitely it is a sector to look at to protect your capital. That way it is an investment opportunity, but the growth prospects will be pretty moderate, not outbeating the market returns. Coming to financial sector, insurance forms part of your financial sector as per SEBI's classification. And about 35 to 40% of allocation by all mutual funds, by all PMSs, or on the financial sector. When I say financial sector, it includes NBFCs and banks. We have a coverage on 5 stocks in the financial sector. We have a coverage on City Union Bank, a small South Indian bank. We have a coverage on Kotak Mahindra. We have a coverage on HDFC Bank, HDFC. And we have a coverage on NBFC from South India again, Sundaram Finance. So these are the top picks for us when it comes to banking sector. Yes, when we talk about economic growth, it is implied that economic growth cannot happen without a growth in banking sector. Every aspect of economic growth involves a banking activity. So definitely the banks have a great future. But again, when I talk about the sector, I'm saying a top-down approach will not work in this market. We have to be very specific in our stock picking, and it has to be bottoms up, because we will equally see a number of banks failing. Take, for example, the Yes Bank, what I discussed earlier. Yes Bank was one of the most decorated, celebrated, high-growth bank till a year ago, and all of a sudden it came crashing. So what I mean to say here is stock picking will be the key. You will see many banks, perhaps in this country, they will not allow it to go belly up, but they will find business very tough. They'll keep on diluting, diluting their equity, and they will show very, very poor results on the given background. But there are banks like what I listed, what we have in a portfolio, which I'm very, very sure and confident and presume that they are going to outbeat the environment and give very, very strong results, taking the environment into account. For example, let me talk about HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, and CUB, what we have in a portfolio. These are the only 4 banks we have in a portfolio. All these banks during good times have provided cyclical provisions. That's very important. That's exactly what I'm trying to say when I talk about the quality of management. At good times, you don't splurge. what you do is you create a reserves for bad times. You don't know when a bad time will come, from where a bad time will come. Take, for example, HDFC. It has a lending book of 4.2 lakh crore, if I'm right. I think in and around 4.2 lakh crore. And that bad debts is hardly about, I'm saying the gross, at the gross level, is just 4,200 crores. It's only about 1.1 to 1.2% of their disbursements. And they have a countercyclical provision of about 7,000 crores. So these banks have been very, very conservative in their balance sheets. And in the finance sector, the companies which have got very prudent, conservative policies will thrive and survive. And stock picking will be the key. So for me to say the sector as such is good is not what I mean to say. There has to be enough hard work done on picking the stocks from this sector. Otherwise, you may not see any returns. Have I answered your question?
Yes, sir. So due to the time constraint, we have tried and taken up as many questions as possible, but there yet are many questions and we will surely try to answer them via email. You can also get in touch with Param if you have any queries, and you can visit our website www.joindrapms.com for more information. Thank you all and stay safe.
Thank you.